The next piece of the PBL Planner is the Compendium. And the Compendium is essentially a collection of resources, both for structures as well as for content, that the students will be able to utilize as they make their way through the project. And so, getting into a little bit more detail here, within that collection of resources, it's entirely up to you as a teaching team to decide what resources you want to include. And my recommendation to you would be to start small. Don't feel like you have to take on the world. You may have seen examples of project compendiums, but within those examples that you've probably seen, those are after years of teaching teams working together, determining what they wanted to include. So just a couple of suggestions here. One, in thinking about common tools such as a project calendar, sentence frames that you may use no matter what the content area is, writing supports, writing structures. This could also include vocabulary or particular terminology, some of those tools that might be used across content area for the project as well as beyond the project. In addition to that, you have a suggestion here for common texts that are used across content area. So the nice thing about students having a compendium, whether it's a digital compendium or it's in print, they're using it in all of their classes. And so they'll come into a class and maybe work with a text in English that they've just been working with in history. So it really does help to establish that continuity and the relationship between the classes, not only for project development, but also for students to see that there are common things that we do in each of our classes, even though the content may be different. And then another suggestion here might be rubrics that you use for throughout the project, or opportunities or tools for reflection that you might have the students doing. And so here's just a quick view of a couple of examples. Included here on the left-hand side, you can see a short list, as I had suggested in the slide before, the project synopsis, which is that overview of the project that you're building out during these 2 weeks, and then including something like a weekly planner where students can actually use the compendium as an additional resource for planning. In this case, we included the critical concepts because we felt like those were important for helping us keep in mind the standards that we were wanting to address through the project. And then the last two examples there are actual documents that students used both in history and in English to familiarize themselves with the context of their client in preparing for meeting their volunteers and exploring the museum. The only other thing that I wanted to point out here is that part of the decision-making process of what is included in the compendium is highlighted here in the second column, where it talks about the components and where it makes sense. So we know, for example, no matter which part of the project students are working on, that project synopsis will be helpful. And so we included all there as an indicator. Whereas those other documents, the USS Midway History 1 and 2, both of those are a part of component number 1 because that's where students are developing their interview questions. And so this is a helpful resource for that. And then, as I said at the beginning of this tutorial, this can be used as both a print or a digital resource. The one piece that I will say is that for the print resource, this is something that you would work with admin to allocate the funding for that. And then the way that we do it at our school site is there's actually barcoded and students check it out from the library just to give it that higher level of accountability, similar to a textbook for students to make sure that they are taking care of it, they keep track of it, and then, as I said, using it as often as possible within the class itself.